I am actually a recovering student affairs professional. I was an RA, an orientation leader, an overachieving college student, and then soon I was going to graduate, the panic set in. I was like, why can't I be an RA forever? So I got a master's in higher education administration. FYI, it works, it's a job. I worked in higher ed for 10 years and eventually chose to really be an adult. I pay my own utility bills, I've lost 250 pounds, I'm no longer an alcoholic, I'm happily married, I'm doing really well. I travel the country doing social justice talks. Right, none of those are true about any of you. Weird. Well, maybe one or two, but it's really rare. It's kind of like a white boy. Yes. So, I was at a housing conference recently and was asked to MC this as evidence, one, that there is life out of student affairs, but also really to understand that the cool thing about student affairs is you work with college students every day, and your personality and the college students' personalities don't really ever have to fit into the corporate box. We're here today to talk about how geek culture is really bringing communication, relationships, diversity, social justice, and just fun back into a professional career path, as well as how it's being used as a learning tool within college campus. So thank you again for coming. I'm going to turn it over to the panel to have y'all introduce who you is and how you use your geekiness.
Alright.
Who you is.
Who you is and what makes you a geek.
Can you tell we're excited to be here?
Alright, my name is Emily Sandoval and I work at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. What makes me a geek? I was born in 1980 and my brother is 8 years older than me, hence Star Wars has always been a part of my life. I grew up watching He-Man and She-Ra. When I was 17, 18 years old is when Buffy the Vampire Slayer came on television. I will say Joss Whedon has shaped my geek adult life.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Belisario and I work at UC Santa Cruz.
UC!
In the house. I think I give my geek credit to my dad, who was watching the original Star Trek, Doctor Who, and that was always on TV when I was growing up, so I watched a lot of that. And then also, as I was growing up watching Super Friends and all the cartoons, Robotech.
Yeah!
Played Atari and was happy to be doing that. I majored in math and computer science as an undergraduate. So I took that geekiness into my working life, and turned, of course, the math degree into student affairs. So I work with students and I totally relate. And it helps me, I think, to connect with my students and my colleagues here. So,
my name is Brian McRae. I'm a resident director at Cal State San Marcos. My dad, growing up, was like the dad from Everybody Loves Raymond, but he wasn't like funny. He was like embarrassing, so I would hide in the grocery store in the comic aisle and just read everything there. And then he's like, Ryan, you know, I'm in the feminine product section. I read Green Lantern, I read Superman, I just fell in love with it. I played Dungeons and Dragons. In 1991, I won the world, I can't believe I'm saying this, the World Dungeons and Dragons World Champion at Gen Con. And I remember putting that up when I went to college, I put that award up and people were like, what? I think I'll take it down. And I'm just an avid reader and I just have a passion for geek culture.
Hi everybody, I'm Alfred Day. I was born a geek. I know this. My primary geek cred is it's my 14th Comic-Con. And everybody's amazed by that. And I'm like, God, I know people who've been to like 50. Like all Comic-Cons. I have lots of friends who've been to all of them. I learned how to read on comic books. I'm a DC guy. You gotta have your team. DC. I had a sort of a different thing. My father was cool. My father was like a bass player and like a musician and like good with the ladies and all that kind of stuff. And he had a very nerdy son, so it was very infinitely disappointing to him. So comics is my hardcore core geek, the base geek, but then I built on that with Star Wars in '77, and then we added, what do we add after that? Disney a little bit later, Buffy and Angel later, and then my latest geek is musical theater. So.
Hi, I'm Tyler Miller. I have worked, I'm going to tell you where I worked before I tell you where I'm currently working. I've worked at UC Santa Barbara, go Gauchos. My alma mater. I went and worked at Chico State, so I went from one party school to another. And then I went to Sonoma State and worked at Sonoma State for 3 years. I worked at CSU Stanislaus for about 9 months. I don't like to talk about, sorry. But I've currently been at Fresno State for the last 4 years. I'm the assistant director of housing. I love Bulldogs. I am happily married with 2 kids, with one on the way, another daughter. So they're my muse. My geek cred is I turned my wife into a geek. I introduced her to sci-fi by showing her Star Trek: The Next Generation, the one with Data. They determined whether or not he's sentient. And since then, she was an English major, and so she kind of looked down on sci-fi until I explained it to her. And now she loves it, and it's gotten to the point where we've turned her parents onto Stargate SG-1. And so I'm kind of more into sci-fi. I love Star Wars. Grew up on Star Wars. I was a latchkey kid, so TV kind of raised me. I remember Mask and He-Man and a lot. So I'm excited at the conference. They're selling the whole series of Masks downstairs, so I'm really excited about that. So,
I haven't thought about Mask in like...
I know! It was crazy, right?
So share with the kids.
So that's a little bit about us, and I will say this, I'm proud of my daughter. She had $10 to spend downstairs. She chose to buy a lightsaber.
Excellent. One of the things I think I've learned in my time, this is my first Comic-Con, I was a virgin this morning. Evidently, I'm just smoking a cigarette now. So, but very interesting. But I'm not a virgin anymore. It's not funny if you have to explain it.
My kids are in the room.
National Geographic special kind of geek, Artemis Fowl, Harry Potter, Cuttlefish special on PBS last week, but you're sad you missed it. I promise you're sad you missed it. So that's a little bit about who we are, but we wanted to know a little bit more about who you are. Who are we going to be talking to today? So by a show of hands or lightsabers, in the audience, if you work in education, as a teacher, a professional, etc. Please know, I don't know any of you really or your jobs, you're probably not doing that work for the pay. So thank you very much for the job, I really appreciate it. What if you are a student of any kind? Excellent, excellent. Okay, good job. And possibly bribed to be here by any of the panelists. This is conduct, judicial thing, something like that. You've been sanctioned to understand the flyers down. Right, okay, great. So and then everyone else, we're just excited you're here because you love geekdom. So, welcome, enjoy. We're going to move on. How I envision this kind of working, I have a list of questions that the panelists were prepared in advance, so this is not a beauty pageant. No pressure, because it just would be too tough of a competition, truly. So we'll go through the questions, and then we'll open it up to Q&A, meaning y'all will probably have questions, they probably will have more of the A, but who knows. We'll do that until the end of the time, not of time, in this particular session. That's the general plan. So, for panel, are you ready for question number 1?
Yeah.
You do not have to answer these questions in the form of a question. I know, that'd be fun, but you don't have to.
You have buzzers?
No buzzers, no, it's too, there's too much sound.
Can you tell we're excited to be up here? Let's just get that out of the way. We're all geeking out right now.
They're like gonna frame their name tags, they were all nervous outside. So my advice to them, for those of you that work on our college campus, my advice to them was pretend this is a community standards meeting. Like 100 people or so who really are excited to be there and they don't really know why. And pretend that you have some news to deliver, like somebody died, except it's fun. Totally works. Right. So, question number 1, are you ready? How do you use your geekiness in your day-to-day work?
And just as an aside, I went to seminary and I did my thesis on the spiritual worldview of the comic book culture, and they had to like have a meeting if I could do it. They were like, "That's not real." You can't read that at graduation.
If they ain't complaining, you're not doing it right. Okay.
So I use my geekness at work. In my office, I have all these comic book, DC, Justice League posters. And when I'm picking RAs, I have to let them know that they're the heroes of my life. And that I have to, they are. And that they all have to be different. I can't hire all Aquaman because then there's like a problem in the desert. And then it's like, I don't know. I can't get the dolphin out of here. Sorry. You know, so I want to hire a very diverse staff with a lot of skills. And that's how I use my geekness. Yeah.
I think being a woman, using my geek cred comes in very handy when interacting with college students. Normally people look at me and they're like, what do you mean you've been to Comic-Con? What do you mean you love Lord of the Rings? I'm obsessed with Lord of the Rings. What do you mean you know who these characters are? You actually have a subscription at a comic book store? You're kidding us. I'm like, no, this is who I am. So I think using my geek cred has helped me reach out. And let's be real, I work at a polytechnic university. So I have a lot, not just architects and engineers, computer science students, the people that are designing our next wave video games. And these are the students I work with. So it really helps me as a woman to actually relate to them. And they seem to respect me because of it.
I'll just talk briefly. For me, it's really about connecting with students. I try to put together a lot of programming, so the excuse is, well, I'm supposed to do programming, but really it's like, oh, Watchmen movie's coming out? I can talk about Watchmen. Awesome. So yeah, I can be here all week. But it's really about, how you sort of reach out to students in my positions. My most recent position, 4th semester C, is Associate Director. President's like at UC Merced, so I can often be the heavy. Who's UC Merced? They're
the Bobcats.
Yes, they are the Golden Bobcats, and they're fantastic. They're no bulldogs. I'm sorry, I'm a bulldog. But one of the best ways that that's happened for me is when I was at UC Santa Barbara as a resident director. I took over one of the lounges one weekend to sort my comics. It was comic sorting time. And I needed space. And I had been there 2 years at that point. I never met more students than the number of students that walked by when I was just in there sort of comics. And they were just like, oh my God, you're human.
Alex or Tyler, do you have anything to add?
Connecting with students. I mean, that's really, it's been said multiple times. I mean, when they think you're this fuddy-duddy, because I'm the assistant director, so I supervise people that supervise the RAs. They think, oh, he's old, he doesn't know anything. But when I start busting out, Dr. Horrible sing-along blog, or they go, wait, you know about that kind of stuff? And I talk about Homestar Runner, things like that. So I mean, things like that really do connect you with students. So yeah.
And I think the other piece of it that we've already been conveying is that we're all geeks. And we know that geeks are going to school with us, and we want to show them that there are things they can do. Because some of them, maybe some of you, are a little shyer or less outgoing than we appear to be, even though I would say I'm terribly shy, and that this job helps me to, I know, right? It doesn't seem like it all the time, but it's totally true. And so having something to connect with and something that is really deeply interesting to me and interesting to students helps to form those relationships.
And I'm going to say this, because I appreciate you saying that, Alex, because Alfred and I were talking beforehand, and when Alfred and I went to high school, you wouldn't be caught dead in a Batman shirt. You get beat up for some of that stuff when we grew up in Belmont High School. Whereas today, the culture more is, you can wear that kind of stuff proudly. And I think for us to be able to lead the way, and share that it's okay to like Lord of the Rings and Magic the Gathering and all of those things, it lets our students feel like they belong. We always talk about wanting to create that sense of belonging and inclusiveness, but we oftentimes forget about that group of students. And so for us, it's been really important too.
So you touched on this next question a little bit, but when we talk about geek culture on campus, what does it look like, and have you really noticed a growth or an evolution in what that has looked like?
I think I'm going to start with this one. So At UC Santa Cruz, we have 10 residential colleges, and I work at Crown College and Merrill College. And the theme of Crown in particular is science, technology, and society. So what I see basically is that much of that population would consider themselves to be geeks. One of the things we have recently started last year is a gaming house. So students who are interested in gaming or who are majoring in computer game design are in this building together, forming their community, playing together. We have seniors who will debut their video game design and then that building exclusively to try to play those games and see how they're doing. And it was so popular this year that next year we're actually going to have 2 gaming houses. So I think that's been great, and the students there have talked about it being a haven for them. So maybe they were ostracized, as you guys were saying, in high school, and this shows that we value and respect this part of their identity, and we want them to develop that and to find that in others. And they get to live together in one building. And then they have an RE who understands them, and I told her I'd put on a plug. Her name is Tabitha. She's going to be graduating next year. She's going to be looking for a job. So just in case any of you have any connections to computer gaming, she's looking for a job in here. But they also produce these diverse programs. So they have epic game tournaments. They are playing Magic the Gathering. They are learning about careers in computer game design or in video game music, because that could be interesting to them, and those kinds of things. So that's fun. But then they also across our college last year, Zombie Apocalypse was quite popular, so you can see people running around all the time playing that together. We had an engineering house, and they would get like old NES machines and recode them, and they would take apart DVD players and put them back together again. But they could do this all together, play Quidditch. And then at Merrill College, this is the other college I work at, we had a number of students enough students who wanted to get together that it was basically an entire residence hall of students who played D&D. And their professional staff person, their coordinator for residential education, became their dungeon master.
So if they get like caught with alcohol, does their like character die or?
They just lose 20 hit points.
You take a 2-step penalty.
Any other programs or growth you've noticed? Evolutions of geekdom?
Well, I mean, I think a lot, as somebody mentioned before, I think we've definitely seen, at least, and I'm a little older than I think most everybody in the panel. I've been doing this for about 15, 20 years, and there's definitely been a growth of geek culture in the last 5 to 10 years that definitely was not present before. And that not only is that just, hey, people more accepting to sort of have these sort of what were previously socially unacceptable interests, but now there's a community around it, and that there's a lot of that, quite honestly, due to Comic-Con, but a lot of it is just around people finding different communities and defining communities in different ways. We had a long conversation the other day about the notion of identity. And we were talking about, like, somebody should do research on sort of geek culture identity, because we were talking about the idea that, I know for me, the idea of my cultural identity really started with my sort of self-identification as a nerd way before I became aware of anything like my racial identity or sexual orientation or any of those sorts.
And I think the other thing, Alfred and I have a theory that this all kind of developed when Tim Burton's Batman came out about 1989, and we really saw it became more socially acceptable because they made a cool, semi-cool, dark Batman movie. It made comic books kind of cool, more cooler. And so I think since that time with the Generation X growing up and being latchkey kids, I think a lot of that has pushed this to the forefront. When I talked to my vice president of student affairs, he was like, Comic-Con, what's that? And he didn't even know what it was. And as soon as I told him, yeah, 140,000 people, he's like, wait a minute. 140,000 people at a conference, and his eyes perked up. Like, he couldn't even imagine that many people being in one place. So I think as our generation, the Generation X, grows up and gets older, it's gonna be more prevalent because it's gonna be more acceptable. Whereas I don't think the generation before us, they would have said, "What are you guys doing with those crazy comic books?" So
that's exactly what they said.
Emily and Ryan, as to kind of segue into the second question, I'll start with y'all, and that is that we're really talking about geeks coming together, and Al talked about like defining community in a different way. Can you kind of take the conversation to a place around diversity, age, gender, sexuality, race, religion, things like this that we're able to cross because of these kind of geek commonalities that minus the geek commonality might become more difficult conversations to have that are more commonplace on campus.
Well, actually, I'm going to include Ryan in this because we're going to talk about something that he put on 2 years ago now, the first one. And when we started having these dialogues over some awesome program that we're going to talk about, he and I started figuring out that working with our college students, if you are part of the geek culture and say D&D, if you speak and know the language, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter your sexual orientation. It doesn't matter your ethnicity. It doesn't matter if you're rich, poor. It does not matter. You speak that language. Same thing goes for any of the genres. Whether you're a Trekkie, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, if you know the characters, you know the background, you know the story, you're in. And that's pretty awesome because if you're not part of that geek culture, those things seem to matter more to people. But in geek culture, in our culture, it may matter, but that's not at the forefront. What at the forefront is what we're watching, what we're reading, what we're playing. That's what matters to us.
About 2 years ago, my boss came to me and he was kind of pissed. And he's like, your programming sucks and you don't really do much. And why should I let you live here for free? And then he like killed a dolphin. And I was like, no, he didn't. He was just like, hey, do some programming. That's pretty much what he said. And so I thought about it and I thought, I was thinking of students that come to college, they put up, somebody puts up like a Kobe Bryant poster and then the roommate puts up like a Pokemon poster and it's like, oh man, like they're just like tension, this Pikachu is screwing it up. So I was thinking, how do I like unite the geeks? And so I did like a Geek Week. And it was just a week of all geek programming and it really kind of formed this like tribal organization where they're all like the Jets on like West Side Story. We're like, we're geeks, like deal with it. We got our DS, Pokemon. So
roll that clip. Is this the West Side Story?
What exactly is Geek Week? Geek Week is a week in university built departments where we celebrate all things that are geeky. A lot of students are timid about what they're interested in, whether it's comic books or anime or Glee, and it's a time for them to come out and embrace what they love and celebrate what they like.
I'm lecturing on Dr. Orwell's sing-along blog.
Who does he tell he wants to fix it? His bloggers and Penny. How does he do that? That's the question. That is correct.
Planning their first Geek Week this coming academic year.
In terms of State already hosted a Geek Week last year. We'll be doing one this year with a poke party and Magic Gathering tournament. So.
I was going to point out that the Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I called the Women's Center and I said, "Do you guys know anybody who loves Buffy?" And she was like, "I love Buffy, I'm the director." And she came down and did Buffy the Vampire Slayer, her stake in feminism and how she portrayed that. And the students loved it, their minds were blown. And then they're like, "We gotta buy all the seasons." I'm like, "Yeah, let me get right on that with all my money that I got laying around in my money tree." But it's called the internet, people.
Do you want to talk, Alex, a little bit about social fiction? Oh, is it another thing else?
Well, no, she's going to talk about it.
Oh, Jake.
So Social Fiction Conference is a brainchild of one of my staff members, Imani Rupert, who is a coordinator for residential education. And in her telling, she said that this conference was born as she was watching X-Men 2 because she was struck by how the story allows all of us as watchers to examine current social issues without, with a story in a story. So she was telling me, like, when Iceman is talking to his parents and they're saying, "Are you sure you have to be a mutant?" Kind of like, you know, with folks who are working with their sexual orientation and coming out. And also looking at these different kinds of leaders who are trying to achieve equality, Professor X and Magneto, and how they're doing it in vastly different ways. So as she was teaching with some of our other staff, a leadership and diversity class, she was teaching it through X-Men 2 and was finding that it was really accessible to the students. They were understanding it. They've seen the movie many times. They've seen the series. They've watched the comics, you know, the cartoons, whatever it was. And found that it allows us this opportunity to talk to each other and to make it accessible and to make it feel a lot less judgmental because you're talking about a different world even though you're talking about the same kinds of issues. So this social fiction conference has been our way, and now it's going into its 4th year, to encourage students to be savvy consumers of what they're reading and what they're buying and ingesting. It celebrates their interests. It gives them opportunities to learn from each other because we have students and staff working together to give presentations. They get to work on large-scale activities and presenting and public speaking. And this is so many of ours, and we have some former presenters even in the audience. And we continue this activity, and it's something that's great because it allows students a lot of autonomy. We have a student coordinator who puts the conference together with our staff. We have students who are doing the presenting. We're continuing to do this. It's fairly simple to replicate if anyone's interested in doing that. And we're always looking for people who are interested or interesting to come and talk to and with our students.
Are there any other specific programs that you'd recommend on campuses, or we'll kind of move into technology, Geek Tech, and how students or even professionals are using technology in geeky ways?
I talked a little bit about, during my time at UC Merced, UC Merced, I don't know how many people are familiar with it. It's the newest, the 10th campus in the UC system. It's a very small campus. It's only been there, it was founded in 2005, so it hasn't been there very long. And we were struggling, you know, my former art, and we were struggling to, oh God, Molly's here too. We were struggling to sort of figure out how to do programming. We started realizing that, you know, the student population had sort of changed, and they were much more technologically invested and technologically savvy. So we started investigating the idea of doing flash mob programming, and some of our more successful program was network gaming. Some more successful programming was around tech and around sort of utilizing where the technology was going. As Kevin Smith says, going where the puck is going to be. And really, before I left, had really gotten some momentum on moving forward on using sort of the new communication technology, particularly since everybody's carrying a computer right in their pocket, to really be able to sort of do non-traditional programming. And the trick was always convincing sort of the powers that be that you could count a program that didn't necessarily happen with everybody in a room, but that students that all of your learning outcomes were still happening, that you were still getting the education that you wanted to have students have. They were just doing it in a way that wasn't traditional or wasn't measurable in the traditional way. So that was just something we were moving forward on quite a bit when I was at UC Merced. Well,
as you can see, someone's got an iPad. Is that an iPad or iPad 2? 2 on stage. So we love technology too, those of us on stage. One of the things I love to use is Gowalla, which is kind of like Foursquare, check-in places, things. But we'll set up scavenger hunts for our students to check in on and around campus. And so we'll do campus tours, and if they hit all those spots and can show us and have their because on Gowalla you can check in from the comfort of your own home and everything, but they go take a picture at each of the spots when they check in, and they get done the trip, they'll get a prize or something that we'll do for them. I also have a marketing department. It's kind of nice. Being the assistant director, I have my own marketing team, and they've really started interacting with students on Twitter and Facebook. It goes without saying that trying to connect with our freshmen coming in and giving them the information they need, Facebook's kind of the way to go. And so they'll create whole new communities on Facebook for those students coming in.
We're in Google Plus.
I'm not quite on Google. I think we're going to begin screen. I'm kind of comfortable.
You got to be where the puck is going to be.
Yeah.
Wait for the puck to get there.
I'm pro Google Plus, and we use Facebook. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's up and coming. But it's funny how the 18-year-olds look at me. They're like, "You're on Facebook? Like, how is that possible?" I'm like, "It's for everybody. Like, you don't have to."
There's also the students who put their videos of them drinking and fighting on Facebook, and they're like, "You saw that?" Yeah.
My abacus.
Another technology tool that our campus is using is QR codes, and they're throughout all of campus, whether it's campus dining, we're going to try to use them more for programming. But our students actually aren't using Facebook and Twitter as much. I think there's something else out there other than Google Plus that they're using, but QR codes, blogs, putting anything we can electronically, not using paper because they don't read it. So that's kind of what we're trying to lean towards in terms of technology.
It's much more sustainable to not have to use paper anymore. It's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. The last question that I have for the panel, which also comes with it, and then we will segue to the Q&A section, is you each have mentioned a couple of challenges that you've faced, but to talk specifically about the challenges of bringing geekdom into these professional meetings and programming on campus, and to the non-geeks, and what kind of type of difficulties you may have had within higher education as a whole.
Anybody want to take this before I do?
I guess the challenge is for people to see the value of it. Like when I do a program, I'm talking about why in Harry Potter why it became so popular, because anybody can identify with either Harry, Ron, or Hermione just based on either having a crappy family, having a poor family, or feeling like an outcast. Like everyone can identify with that. That's why it was very popular. People are like, but is that real? Like, shouldn't we talk about like how to get a job, or how to or how to tie a tie? And I'm like, ugh, like you've hired the wrong person. Like, I'm not a geek in the closet by no means. I'm up out of the basement. So yeah. So just to push back on being authentic, and then not wanting to incorporate it in absolutely everything I do.
I would think the speed to which geek culture moves is a challenge, particularly around tech, in the sense that a student will come up to me with a good idea, or I'll come up with a good idea about IT, and I'll be like, well, let's think about that. That's not really in our 5-year plan. And I got an iPad last year, and I was like, okay, we can do this with iOS tech, and well, we're not sure we're going to support that.
You got to fill out a form.
And just, quite honestly, most of the stuff I've been able to do with tech has just been the stuff I brought from home. Right? It took me 15 years to convince them to let me get a Mac on my desk. So
I'm right there with you. I'd rather suck on a hospital mop than eat a PCs.
I think most of us are Mac people up here.
Yeah, you can write that down.
We have a contract with Dell at work, so So I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that they touched on this as well. It's the idea that what's challenging is that not everyone is in the same place around tech. I'm lucky enough to have a roommate over there, actually, who does IT. She works in IT services for the campus, and so she's up on things, and she'll tell me things that are new and different, and I'm like, oh, great, and then I'll go to a meeting with other people who are managers like me, and they'll be like, oh, that's nice, what is that? And I said, oh, we're presenting at Comic-Con, I was totally excited, and they're like, Comic-Con, what is that? You know, and they're trying to understand, but they're just not there. So that can be challenging, trying to explain it in a way that just doesn't make me sound like a bigger geek. And that it's very focused on geekness or geekdom or whatever that is, and that it is wide, can have some wide appeal, and it does apply to students in their lives.
I tried to explain Twitter to my campus 4 years ago, and they're like, never gonna happen. I'm like, Time Magazine. So it's slow in some things, but I think you have to show it and show that it's useful, and you have to go solo on it, and you could get fired. But and I'm not like, oh, you can get fired. No, really, like, you can get fired. You can get fired. And so you have to kind of weigh the risk and reward. I can't try everything.
And the students are going to always move so much faster than you. Like as a student affairs professional, you really have to be where the students are at in a very real, everyday sense. And the university just moves at a much slower pace.
One of the stories I like to tell, and I'll introduce our special guest in a minute, but one of the benefits of being in student affairs is we get calls from time to time and say, hey, you have 1,000 college students. Would you like 500 razors to give them? I have a lifetime supply of razors, in my closet. But one day I got a call and they said, hey, would you like 1,000 decks of Magic cards? And I was like, well, I can't make these decisions in a vacuum, and so I had to kind of talk to some other people and ask them what they thought, mainly the people I supervised. And I said, what do you guys think about 1,000 decks of Magic cards to give to our residents? And they looked at me and they were like, are you crazy? Like, who are you? You're our boss, and none of our students are going to want Magic cards. Like, that's for like high school students, or like, people like who play Pokemon. Those aren't our students. And being the assistant director, I get to, kind of say, well, we're going to do this anyway. So I said, instead of giving me 1,000, let's try 500. And so we had 500 Magic cards, decks of Magic cards, and as soon as our RAs heard about it, they went nuts. And so the RDs and the student comment coordinator were like, what's going on here? And so they would come and they'd say, and I'd say, how many do you want? They're like, well, how many can I have, Tyler? I would give them boxes, they'd have programs, they'd have students come to these programs. And so we did it again this year. We got more Magic cards, and my staff was like, okay, we're doing this. And so it was really neat to form that partnership, and again, kind of showing it works, and showing that we're reaching our students. And so, how many of you are fans of Dungeons and Dragons? So yeah, all the Dungeons and Dragons people are over here. Well, we have with us today, from Wizards of the Coast, Chris Perkins, who is the senior producer for Dungeons and Dragons. He's a key team member of the research and development team at Wizards of the Coast. And he's also known as the Dungeon Master to the Stars. So I'm going to bring Chris up here to join us and talk a little bit about what's in it for them. So Chris, we'll talk a little bit, why would they want to partner with us? Why would they do stuff like this?
Because they are the future of us. We at Wizards of the Coast are all geeks. We all sort of came up through different colleges and universities, and we would have killed to have the opportunity that you guys are talking about. Literally, we would have killed. People buried in the back lots of the colleges. So it's a great privilege for me to be able to sit up here and just chat.
Thank you for being here, Chris.
So as we move into the question piece, what I'm going to ask, because of the way the room is set up, is that if you have a particular question, you can raise your hand. We'll stand up, say your question. If you want to address the question specifically to a panelist, use their name. If you want kind of hopscotch, like see what the panel would like to say, we'll probably limit it to like 2 people per panel for the questions, to make sure we have about 15 minutes left to make sure we go through all the questions. And if you are particularly interested, which I imagine you will be, if you have a particular question, Joe, our fabulous Joe, will be handing out free swag. And you get swags for questions, and then when the session is over, there's still more swag. There is also a Twitter hashtag.
So if you want to backchannel this and be like,
I'm proud of it. I'm being authentic. I do not do the Twitter. But there is a Twitter that you can follow as well. So, we'll start, the first hand I saw was right there.
Wait.
Yes.
Hi. I'm the Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admission at USC. And, fight on. And I graduate from USC with my master's this December in post-secondary administration and student affairs. So I have a question for Alpha and anybody else that wants to answer. When you talked about assessing learning outcomes for online programming, how do you do that, or at least how do you indicate that you're going to do that? Anybody else that's done it before, how would you go about doing that?
Well, you have to be, from my experience, you have to be very careful, and you have to start in the planning stages. And when you're planning, you've got to, particularly around this, because you've got to justify. In the planning stages, you put in how you're going to measure learning outcomes. So for folks who aren't familiar, learning outcomes are, when you work, how many people don't know what learning outcomes are? Okay. When you work in higher education, you can't just go out and say, hey, I'm going to do this and it's going to be good. You actually have to have goals in mind in terms of what your students are going to get out of any particular thing. And more specifically, which is actually more important to people who are signing the checks, you have to be able to measure them. And you have to, so that you can go to your dean of students and say, I need more money because I've been able to prove that this teaches students X, Y, and Z. And so what we try to do is really build into the measurement right into whatever the thing we're doing. So for example, if you're doing a flash mob, part of that flash mob is tracking, we sent out this many, this is the number of students that showed up, so you're tracking attendance. When you're finishing with that flash mob, asking people to tweet back, hey, did you like it? Da, 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 da. And then you can use the Twitter feed to actually assess sort of the relative satisfaction of the program. So you really have to think from the learning stages all the way through. You have to start, because a lot of times when we do programming, we don't think about the assessment piece till the very end of the program. You got to think of it as you're designing the program up front.
Right, and for the record, I'm keeping a stack because I'm a geek. So while they're answering, just make eye contact with me. So just the lineup thus far. Next up is going to be Green Lantern. Good job. Then black shirt. Then green shirt. And then Jacinda. I actually know her name. So if I haven't called your name, make eye contact with me, and I will keep them going as long as I can. But we are at Green Lantern.
This is to all within the member of the panel who has been raised on Star Trek. First of all, I want to know who your favorite captain is, and how that happened in terms of bringing your geekdom into education and things like that, if they've affected your educational style, or if they've influenced you in a positive way, because I'm a cross between Janeway and Cisco, and they influenced me.
Picard.
I'm sorry, I am a fan from the beginning to the end, everything except for Enterprise, because that was a waste of series. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Green Lantern answered Green Lantern's question.
I would say if I was like Kirk, I'd be fired, because that means I'm like carousing in my resin hall. Nay on that. And then I would say Picard, because he delegates well, and he lets people make their own decisions. He's not just being like, this way. And he kind of owns his mistakes, and he owns his broken heart. Like when he gets trapped in the he has a whole flute. He plays the flute, and we all cry at the end.
His whole lifetime.
Yeah, he spends a whole lifetime. So yeah, I would say
the inner light. Oh, the inner light.
Yeah, the inner light. Thank you.
This is why I watch Star Wars.
Picard would be my favorite.
Right, are we good? For the record, we have 11 people on the list, and we have 14 minutes, so I'm just going to pause the list there. We have, next up is black shirt. Okay, and green shirt, you're on there.
And you can tell us your name if you'd like. I mean, you don't have to be known as black shirt.
They need to keep their secret in case they need to fight crime.
So I'm actually a doctoral student, and I'm actually here doing my dissertation research on Comic-Con. Talking to me for an interview, I'd love the help. And I actually teach classes on one of the media space. So I teach a lot of this stuff in the classroom. So I guess my question is to anybody, you touched on this a little bit, is what role do you think what happens in the classroom can have to sort of connect with students and bringing out this kind of culture, and like what actually happens in the classroom as part of course content?
Oh my goodness.
The problem we're struggling with is we all want to be like, oh my God.
We all want to answer that question.
But we're student affairs, so we're trained to let other people talk first.
No, I will say, I don't think it needs to be necessarily like part of the official course content. Both of my siblings are professors, one at Cal State Northridge, one at college. They don't teach pop culture necessarily, but my brother is the one who taught me about Star Wars, everything I know about Star Wars, and he integrates it in his Chicano studies classes. So while he's not teaching sci-fi or comic books or a whole course on Star Wars, which he could teach, I think it's just important that he can integrate it in the blog when he connects with the students, and that impacts them.
I developed a course at Fresno State that's actually becoming permanent next year, and I'm excited about that. So it's a leadership and residential life and student involvement. And we relate leadership theories to like different superheroes and comic books and things like that in the classroom. And for some who connect with it, they'll connect with that. But when you talk pop culture, everyone in the classroom has a piece of it. Whether it's watching last night's episode of Modern Family, or watching last night's episode of Community, or The Office, or we can talk in that kind of language, and that's the language our students understand. They don't understand the Kohlberg's moral development model and what's that. But when you start explaining to them on last night's episode, of Burn Notice, the moral development of Michael Weston, they can start relating to some of that. And so I think it really does become that language for the course. But each semester, depending on who's in there, we may talk about different pop culture things. And I think that's one of the exciting things about developing that course. And I can't tell the curriculum committee that's what we're doing, but I tell them this is the outcome, the learning outcomes. And as long as the students get that, they don't really care how you get there.
I think geek culture has to be like the gateway drug to like other interests. And so when I talk in my class, a student will say something really great, and I'll be like, 10 points Gryffindor, and they'll like, I'll laugh, they're like, how did you know? I'm Slytherin. I Slytherin.
So it's over, guys. Harry Potter's done.
So, anywho, yeah, next question.
Alright, so we're not going to get through the whole list.
I'm just kidding.
When you make giant sad faces, but there are plenty of t-shirts. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the next 4 people on the list in 7 minutes. That's not going to happen. And then I'm going to say a couple of closing things, and then we have some flexibility through the last session in this room for you to ambush individually. And by ambush, I mean no physical contact, safe space rules, ask for consent, no biting.
If you want swag, stay around and we'll hand out some swag.
Yeah, there's like
stuff on our campus.
boxes, plural, of swag.
I do not want to carry anything.
Alright, are we ready? We're moving on to
Speed round.
AKA, what's your name?
Jeanette.
Jeanette?
Yes. Hi. Well, first of all, I cannot believe this exists because I've been working in education for about 6 years now, so this is awesome that this happened. I'm a high school counselor, and I am the head of our anime club at my high school. Yay! I know, right? And so I work in a very unique population, and I've been given in charge of this year dealing with they called it the alternative culture that's in our school. So, which meant all our gamers and all our kids that are into the Harry Potter, that's how they refer to as the Harry Potters. So I would like to do something like a Geek Fest at my high school, but at a smaller scale, because definitely I won't get parent phone calls with, Street Fighter and things like that. What would you recommend in that kind of a session if I were to do something like this at a high school level?
Well, I would say as much as you can involve parents, because by the time students are with us in college, their families are connected to them, but they're not part of their everyday life. But for you, it's possible that the families are still a part of that. So to involve the students and get them to help generate the ideas, and then you as the person with a little more education or experience around that to talk about some of those learning outcomes and why it is important to talk about Harry Potter. So for us, for instance, at UCSC, because we have a college system, they liken it a lot to Harry Potter to Hogwarts, right? The different colleges are like the different houses, and they build this identity and why that's important to them, and help them to choose the activities that they're going to find most meaningful. And then I would say also to get volunteers even from this room. It sounds like there's a lot of educators here. I know that we're happy to helpful and to be resources. It sounds like there's some other folks here who would be great resources, and I'm thinking about that too as I'm looking for future keynote speakers for social fiction. But to tap into those kinds of resources so that you don't have to do it all by yourself, because that is a big job.
I just have to say this, we just opened 4 new halls at UC Merced. We're in the process. I tried so hard to get them named after the hall. Nobody went for it. And I was like, come on!
I get through school because I have my Slytherin, candle right there, because I'm all about like Hufflepuff, Gryffindor, Slytherin, all the way.
And you can start things like debates like, did Bella have a healthy relationship with Edward?
I'm the bad guy. The bag on Harry Potter.
Alright, so I'm moving on to the next question. Alright, next question. We have Jacinta, blue t-shirts.
Hi, I'm Jacinta. I'm actually the national president of my sorority, so I have plenty of undergrads that
Go Greek! Go
yes,
Greek!
she's my national.
Are there Greek geeks?
There are Greek.
There are.
Yeah, there are.
And so I myself have to kind of come out as being geek for my undergrad sometimes, and so my question to you guys is, do you feel like you have like a coming out process or period, or how do you come out to even your students and even administrators to say like, yeah, I am geek and I want to include this, or I want to do something like this programming? What steps, I guess, do you take, or what do you think about when you're like coming out as geek to your students or to administrators?
It's so much easier to students, because students, you have the sort of ability to be, you're already in authority, so what do you care? It's like, yeah, I like that. But to administrator, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, wouldn't recommend it like your first year. But at a certain point, once they see what you do and that you're good at your job and that you can do the stuff they want you to do, that's fine. I'm capable of doing that. But here, this is something else I can bring to the table. It's more about what it is like a lot of different aspects of diversity, thinking of diversity in terms, not in terms of a negative, but diversity in terms of, hey, there's a richness that can be brought when you create a space that's safe for a lot of different types and kinds of people.
One of my RAs, and not Matt Walsh, who's sitting right here, he was infatuated with Pokemon, and I found out about it on the DL, and I didn't know it was the DL, so he just mentioned it, and I was like, oh, hey man, I hear you're totally into Pokemon. I got really loud. He's like, oh my god, shut up. And he was just like, he's doing right now, look at that. And, we had to talk about it, like behind closed doors. I had to like turn on my Sarah McLachlan, so we're over here. What? So, I love her. So, yeah, I guess with students, if you give them a place where they know they're going to be celebrated, then they're more likely to come out with what is going on, whatever they're identifying with. So if you set it up first, if you build it, they will come. They're more likely to show up to say, that is where I belong. Because when students go to college, it's the first place they go where no one loves them. College is the first place they go where no one loves them. But then there's you who say, I will love them. And you set up a place for them so that they're like, hey, what's normal? What's normal? What's normal? Hey, they're doing a Pokemon thing. I'm good. So, good answer.
Just real quick, I wanted to say too that I think it's up to us as the people who are the role models and who are out there to say, yep, this is who I am, I'm a geek, it's all good. It's totally fine to be this way. And there are many more of us, and we just have to be out there. And I talk about with my students often my cool kid theory, which is if you're fine with who you are, if you're showing that self-confidence, and you're willing to share it openly with others, then you will bring them to you, and then you become one of those cool kids, and we talk about that a lot with our student leaders.
There are entire companies of geeks out there.
Okay, so I'm getting the 2-minute warning. So this is what I would like to do, is person in yellow shirt, I'm sure you have a name.
No, that's actually my name.
Person in yellow shirt.
Do you have business cards?
So this is what I'm proposing. So Joe is passing out the t-shirts in the order of which I came up with these questions, because they didn't obviously get to anyone. There is plenty, so relax. So what I want to suggest is that kind of stay where you're sitting until we get through the list so that Joe can go in the right order. yellow shirt is going to ask a question. The panel is going to stay up here until we get kicked out of the room.
I was curious, George.
The piece that I think is really important to understand about the purpose of this workshop, for those of you that do have to leave or can't stick around for the questions, is that really what we're talking about is authenticity. And so as I travel the country doing social justice work, what happens is I come to campuses and people want to know, like, what do I do so I'm not, like, I don't show up like an asshole anymore. And the truth is that there isn't a step list. There isn't, like, you know, up, down, left, right, A, B, poof, you're perfect. Like, that's not what's really going to happen. For record, that is a geek cred right there. What I think is really, really important to understand is that it's literally my grandmother's favorite quote, is that be yourself because everybody else is taken. And the more that we can love every single person we're around so that they are strong enough to be themselves, we're not going to have a geek week. We're just going to be able to show up and be really who we are. The importance of connecting with each other, whether it is virtually or physically, I think is really imperative. And what's interesting is that the research that is coming out is saying that college students aren't connecting. But the truth is that I think that there are more genuine relationships happening now than there were when I was in school. And we don't know what to do about it. So we're producing research that says this is weird. And we're going to sabotage what's actually good. So stop listening to adults. And connect with people and build these communities, because the world, the future is really relying on it.
She didn't mean you, Eliana. You need to listen to your dad.
So, yellow shirt's going to start off with the questions. I'm going to direct Joe. We have 4 more people, I think, to get t-shirts. And then very politely, in a mannered way, you're going to ambush Joe for t-shirts. So, yellow shirt.
Yeah. So I helped get a campus read program off the ground in my last job. And anytime anything in the comic medium was introduced or nominated, the president respectfully, and then English faculty not so respectfully, would really throw it out the window right away. So I know it's easy to get into a curriculum teaching class here and there, but what do you see as, you know, first of all, do you believe the comic medium belongs in the classroom as actually
Yes.
And do you see that as happening in the future?
Possibly. I want to plug a great documentary called Dig Comics. I don't know if you're familiar with it. This guy Miguel Sima, I think is his last name. He does a whole documentary on what happened to comics, because in the 40s and 50s, I mean, it was mainstream. I mean, everybody was reading comics, and then all of a sudden it just became this, what do you need, comics? And so I think educators, especially those above us, see that comic books are more than just Batman. And I think a lot of times, I love Batman, by the way. Okay. But he's my favorite. But I'm just saying, when people think of comics, they think of Superman, Batman, Green Lantern. They don't think of, you know, some of the books you find downstairs that you wouldn't find in the mainstream. And I think having educators see historical comics and things like that as a way to reach students, I think could be the bridge in.
And I would say if you hand somebody a copy of Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, and they read that and still can't do it, I don't want to know. Or can't do nothing for you.
Or books like Mouse or Road to Perdition, stuff that really has a really strong literature backing. And you may have to, I know you're going to be pissed, yellow shirt, but whatever. You may have to gift that to them and just find some allies and be like, look what I got you. And you give them that gateway drug, you know, and the first hit's free. You know, like, you got to pay now. You got to pay. They're gonna be like, what's next? I'm like, I'm not telling you. So
and also really try to make the networking connections here with a lot of the folks at the Comics Art Conference who have already fought that fight and successfully. I think is like a real critical sort of component, because that's, if anybody hasn't had a chance to participate in the Comics Arts Conference, go to some of those sessions. Just you got it. It's the most amazing conference. It's an academic conference that coincides with Comic-Con. It's amazing.
And I think we're closing soon. I just want to thank you guys. You have to make some choices. I just thank you. So
don't remind us.
It's Batman Year 1 repeats at 10:15.
I know we're not as cute as Starbucks, but you know.
But we'll be available if you have questions. We can join your call.
We got a lot of stuff to give away.
We have lots of campus swag, so
hats, t-shirts.
But thank you very much. We really appreciate it. You've made a dream of ours come true.